Very good morning to you, Gary. Thanks so much for joining us. OK, after last night, which there seemed to be two camps, not a good England performance, or it's great to get a win and let's crack on. Which one are you in?
I'm in both. No, I think that if you said to me as a player, as a coach, or even now as a fan, that you would get a clean sheet, that you would win the first game and you have 3 points and be sat there at the top of the table, I would snap your hand off. I think that I've been part of many tournaments where it's very difficult and teams are very well prepared. I actually don't think some of the teams in the underdog position have been that well prepared in the first part of this tournament, but I thought Serbia were, and they were strong and they were compact in defence, and there's no doubt that we are a little bit undercooked. Just obviously players not having played for a few weeks, maybe that's the first time that team's gone out there and played together, and I think that they'll get better. On the other hand, there were some imbalances in the team. They looked a little bit sluggish, and all part of growing in a tournament. But I think the most important thing I have to say is winning and making sure you get over the line. There are times in the past where I've been part of teams that would have conceded late on and ended that game 1-1.
Yeah, you've been in England squads at major tournaments that have won, lost and drawn in the first game of those tournaments. So that sense of getting a win and building perhaps momentum, they can go back to the training camp now and go, right, OK, these are the things we need to work on, but we got the 3 points.
Yeah, I mean, they're an experienced bunch of players. It's England's most successful group of players and coach for 50, 60 years. And they know what they're doing in tournaments, and I think we have to trust them. There are some sort of small alarm bells around balance and having a good group of players that are very talented, but, are we as good a team? I think that last night you start to think about the impact and influence of Jordan Henderson and Calvin Phillips. I know Calvin Phillips was, at times when he played alongside Declan Rice, he was sort of suggested that he needed to go out and need to be a more attacking option, but the best players don't make the best teams sometimes, and there's just an element of England's midfield. Obviously, left back, we're aware of the fact that Kieran Trippier's got that right foot and he's playing there because of all the injuries in that position, which creates further imbalance. But in midfield, somehow we've got to try and get that right, and Gareth, I think, will be more than aware of that that sort of having that partner alongside Declan Rice is important, because I actually don't think Declan Rice is at his very best when he sat back there covering for other players moving forward. Mikel Arteta found that out at Arsenal and worked out that he was better being able to move forward in that channel that he played in, and Jorginho came in, or Partey at the end of the season. So for me, I think that midfield is the major concern, and that fluidity of the game that comes through there is one thing that I think we need to try and work on in these group phases, because when we play against a good team, we'll have to have it right.
Yeah. Because obviously it was an experiment. He's played there before, but the idea of putting Trent Alexander-Arnold into that midfield as well. As a right back, how much quicker is the game in that central position? Can that sometimes catch you out? What did you make of his performance there?
I can't relate to playing as right back and then moving into midfield. It's something that would be completely foreign to me. I mean, the idea of a defender ordinarily receiving the ball with his back to play is difficult. That's why they're not midfield players to start with. That's why they're called fullbacks or centre-backs. Because if you're good enough to receive the ball with your back to play, which I think is one of the most difficult things to do in football, on the half turn, looking over your shoulder, knowing where you are, you're a very, very good player, and you're a different level of player, a different competence level when it comes to technical ability than a fullback. So Trent going in there, we know he can do it when he moves in there from right back into midfield, and he can then deliver those crosses and those passes. But there were times last night where he found himself obviously with his back to play, and that is a different story. I think, but I don't really want to focus on him as being sort of like a problem in there. I think that for me, it was the balance of the entire midfield, and I include Declan Rice in that as well, and what England need to have in there to be able to move forward in this tournament. All eyes will be on Trent Alexander-Arnold. His best position is right back, and then having the ability to be able to move forward on that right-hand side or come inside and sort of play that sort of quarterback role. It doesn't look like we're going to do that. It looks like we're going to stick with Kyle Walker at right back, which I think is absolutely the right decision. And Trent's going to have to fight for his role in midfield, along with obviously Mainu, Wharton, Conor Gallagher.
Yeah, Jude Bellingham was magnificent, as we would expect, but is there an idea then that you put Jude Bellingham in there, first of all, work out where you're going to play him, whether that's sort of as the number 10, and then build everything around that? Is that where we're at with England at the moment? And then that throws up question marks of Foden, Saka, Cole Palmer maybe. Where do they all fit into that mathematical conundrum?
And what you've just said is the question that every England fan has been asking for the last 10 days, 2 weeks, and they're still asking after game one. And one thing that I never, football fans, pundits, journalists, broadcasters, we're not easy to con. We are knowledgeable in the sense of knowing what we see in front of our eyes. And Gareth will understand that himself. He'll know that he's got an issue with these talented players. Now he gets them all into the team. But most importantly, with the right balance. And there is an imbalance at the moment that just might need working through. Now, an imbalance may have been created last night, not because of the wrong personnel. It may be that they just haven't played enough together. And it may be that when you see that team play together for 3 games in the group, and that might be the way that Gareth goes, sometimes we all sort of think, well, OK, Foden didn't work on the left, Trent didn't work in midfield, let's get them two out and put 2 others in. It may be the way that Gareth goes is actually, no, what I need them to do is get good together and play them together, because that's what I believe in, and actually have 3 games under their belts in the group games whereby they build that rhythm with each other, because there's a familiarity thing, and actually throwing sort of, if you like, the baby out with the bathwater may not be the thing to do here. And I think that ultimately Gareth, I think, has got great experience of how to manage tournament football. And it might be the opposite of what we all think, which is, well, let's get someone else in midfield alongside Declan Rice. It may be that they need to play together a bit more.
I hear what you're saying. However, you know far better than me that we've been having debates like this for years and years. Scholes, Gerrard, Lampard. How do we get all of them in? And nobody could really find the solution for that one. And they gave that a pretty good number of tries, didn't they?
Yeah, and it hit me last night, actually, that people used to say about Gerrard and Lampard and Scholes, it may be that actually Michael Carrick was the right person to play. I think it was not something I just thought of last night. But you start talking about, which 2 out of the 3 should we play? Gerrard, Lampard, Scholes. Probably Michael Carrick with 1 other. Because the reality of it is you need balance. And every team that I played in that won, they had great balance in the team. And they had players who were subservient and did the job for the team. And you see players at top clubs that allow the best players and most talented players to shine, because they play those roles in the team. That means that actually every sort of, if you like, almost like the sort of collective is more important than the individual. And what we have at this moment with England, we have a real shortage of experienced central midfield players that can play in that position. Because I actually think the problem is not just Trent Alexander-Arnold. I'll say it again. I don't think we're getting the most out of Declan Rice in that holding role. That's why Calvin Phillips played with him. And it worked because it allowed Declan Rice, who's one of our best players. I was watching the game last night with Roy Keane. I think Roy Keane could play holding midfield, but you would be stupid if you stopped Roy Keane running forward with his power and his strength and his ability to influence the game in the final third. What we're doing at the moment is we have a player with that type of power in Declan Rice, and we're asking him to sit there in midfield and sweep up. He's not a Rodri. He's not a Busquets. That is not Declan Rice. Mikel Arteta's worked that out this season. So we just need to look at it collectively and work out how we get around it. And, Henderson and Calvin Phillips have filled those roles for years. They're not fashionable players, not necessarily the first players that fans want to see on the pitch. They want to see Bellingham and Palmer and Foden. But to win a tournament, I was saying this the other day, that Real Madrid had Kroos, Valverde and Camavinga behind Jude Bellingham in the Champions League final. That Manchester City often play with Kovacic and Rodri. And quite often Arsenal in the end of the season played with Jorginho and Declan Rice. This idea that England are any different and they can just go out there with this cavalier approach and play all these talented players, I've never bought into.
So of the squad he's got out there, who would you select for that position then? Wharton, I guess, is one that springs to mind, but that would be a hell of a gamble for a young man who was playing for Blackburn in January.
Yeah, but the theory behind bringing in someone who's naturally able to get the ball off the back 4 and start the actual movements through the sort of middle third of the pitch, whether that's Mainu or Wharton. That is the actual right, probably solution. Now, the problem with that is that you've got those players are inexperienced at this level. So it's whether actually Gareth wants to be able to go down that route. But in terms of the players that we've got, they're the ones that naturally fit the role of receiving the ball with their back to play off the back four and can set off attacks and make sure you glue that sort of, if you like, transition through the middle of the pitch. I think it will always be difficult with Rice, Trent, Alexander-Arnold and Bellingham to get that fluidity in that midfield and get those combinations, which will then mean that you don't bring Harry Kane into the game and you don't bring Foden into the game. And that's an even bigger problem. So it's getting that, if you like, fluidity in midfield, the ability of someone to be able to get the ball. That's why I said quite regularly that Paul Scholes is the best football player that I ever played with, because he did the thing that actually completely glued the team together in possession.